13-year-old Luke Matthews had grown used to the cruel whispers and laughter about his limp, a result of a congenital hip disorder that plagued him since birth. Multiple surgeries left him physically stable but emotionally bruised. After moving to the rural town of Pine Brook with his aunt, Luke hoped for a fresh start. But Pine Brook was small, and its people were tightly knit, suspicious of outsiders. Luke's limp, quiet demeanor and city upbringing marked him as different and easy target. His tormentors, Jake, Tyler, and Mason, were local boys with loud voices and mean streaks. They zeroed in on Luke like predators, mocking his walk, shoving him in the hallways, and stealing his crutches on the worst day of his therapy. Every day, Luke tried to blend into the background, to go unnoticed, but it rarely worked. His only escape came after school at Wild Haven Sanctuary, where his aunt worked as a caretaker. The sanctuary rescued abused and abandoned animals, horses, goats, dogs, and the occasional donkey. Luke found peace there, brushing ponies and talking softly to skittish cats. The animals didn't judge. They listened. They healed slowly, just like him. It was there in the far paddock that Luke first saw the new arrival, a tall, scarred, gray stallion with wild eyes and a matted mane. Storm, they called him. The name fit. He'd been rescued from a rundown ranch where he'd been starved, beaten, and left for dead. He lashed out at everyone, bucking, kicking, rearing. The staff kept their distance, but Luke was drawn to him. He understood fear, understood what it felt like to be cornered and mistreated. He didn't try to touch Storm, not at first. He simply sat outside the paddock and read aloud. He read books about brave warriors, distant lands, talking animals, and unbreakable friendships. Storm paced at first, nervous, wild. But eventually he began to listen. His ears twitched toward Luke's voice. His pacing slowed. And one day he came close enough to sniff Luke's hand. It was a moment of trust that changed everything. Over the weeks, Luke visited Storm every day. He brought apples, carrots, soft brushes. With time and patience, Storm let Luke stroke his muzzle, then brush his mane. The staff marveled. No one else could get near him, but the angry horse had bonded with the limping boy. Luke felt something inside him shift. He stood taller, smiled more. He rode Storm in slow circles, his limp barely noticeable on horseback. For the first time in years, he felt powerful. One day while cleaning stalls, Luke heard a familiar snicker. He turned to see Jake, Tyler, and Mason, leaning against the fence, their eyes filled with mischief. They had followed him. They'd heard the rumors about the horse. Jake sneered, "So this is your big friend? Doesn't look so tough." Luke ignored them and continued working. Mason threw a pebble at Storm, who flinched but stayed calm. "Bet he walks better than you," Tyler added, laughing. Luke clenched his fists. He wanted to yell, but Storm's steady presence grounded him. Then Jake jumped the paddock fence. "Let's see if he likes me," he said with a grin. Luke's heart raced. "Don't! He doesn't know you," he shouted. Jake reached for Storm's halter. In a flash, Storm reared, hooves slamming the air inches from Jake's chest. Jake fell back, pale and shaken, scrambling out of the paddock. Tyler and Mason laughed nervously, eyes wide. Something had changed in their expressions. Fear, maybe respect. Jake spat in the dirt. "You'll regret that, freak." 3 nights later, Luke awoke to the smell of smoke. Outside, the sanctuary's hay barn was engulfed in flames. Fire lit the night sky, and animals screamed in panic. Luke and his aunt rushed out, herding goats and dogs to safety, calling 911. Luke's thoughts went to Storm. His paddock was near the fire. Without thinking, he ran, ignoring the sharp pain in his hip. The smoke was thick, the heat unbearable. The gate to Storm's paddock was stuck. Luke shouted, coughed, cried out Storm's name. Inside, Storm was panicking, rearing, eyes wild. Luke squeezed through the fence board, stumbling toward him. "It's okay, boy, I'm here," he whispered. Flames crackled behind them. "We have to go." He grabbed Storm's halter. Storm resisted, but Luke didn't let go. "Trust me." The horse hesitated, then took a step, then another. Together, they broke through a section of broken fencing and fled into the smoke-filled night. The fire destroyed 2 barns. Investigators found evidence of arson. A neighbor's security camera caught 3 figures running from the scene: Jake, Tyler, and Mason. The news shocked Pine Brook. The boys were arrested and sentenced to community service at the sanctuary. Luke became something of a quiet legend, but he didn't seek attention. He kept coming to Wild Haven, feeding animals, brushing Storm, helping his aunt rebuild. Then came the Pine Brook Fall Fair. Every year there was a writing showcase. Luke had never entered. This year, his aunt signed him up. "You and Storm have a story worth sharing," she said. Luke hesitated. He still felt the sting of stares. But he saw the trust in Storm's eyes. Maybe it was time. On the day of the fair, the stands were packed. Luke wore a simple shirt and jeans. Storm's coat gleamed. As the announcer called their names, Luke rode into the arena. The crowd fell silent. He didn't perform tricks or stunts. He and Storm moved as one, fluid, steady, graceful. On horseback, Luke's limp vanished. At the center of the ring he dismounted, whispered to Storm, and the great horse bowed. The crowd erupted in applause. Tears filled eyes, not for the performance, but for the bond, the courage, the grace. Jake, Tyler, and Mason watched from the edge, in work shirts, raking hay. They looked different, quiet, contemplative. Community service was humbling. They had fed animals, cleaned stalls, seen Luke work harder than any of them. Jake approached Luke weeks later, offering a clumsy apology. Luke studied his face, then nodded. Forgiveness didn't come easy. But grace? Grace came on the back of a storm. Luke continued to heal, his limp a part of him, but no longer a weight. Storm stayed by his side. Together, they taught Pine Brook that broken things aren't worthless. They're just waiting for someone to believe in them. In time, Jake and the others changed too. They learned how to care for animals, how to listen. They watched Luke and Storm with quiet awe, understanding what they had once mocked. And as the seasons turned, the sanctuary became more than a refuge for animals. It became a place where people, too, could find redemption. And so, the boy with the limp and the horse with the scars stood tall, not in perfection, but in grace. Together they reminded a town of the strength in vulnerability, the power of patience, and the healing that grows when someone sees you not as broken, but as becoming.